Ladies and gentlemen, dames en heren, baie welkom. Very warm welcome. Thanks for, braving the cold, but it's not really a very cold day. It's a beautiful day. And a perfect women's day to discuss some crime writing with four esteemed panelists here. I'm not sure we need to introduce any of them. I think their work speaks for themselves, but we're split down the middle between the old firm of Andrew and Deon and two very exciting new female crime writers, Sally and Jeanette.
I'm glad you didn't say young.
For 29, you look amazing. All jokes aside, it's a very exciting time for us organizers. We are thrilled to see such a full house, so thank you very much for coming out. We'll hopefully do this conversation justice. Let's see what we're talking about. Supporting sleuths. Interesting. Sally, can you see? You can see.
Sure, in the right place at the right time.
Have a sip. Okay, let's get cracking. All four of you can be classified as crime writers, but I'd say there's a fair difference in the way that you approach your work. Sally, let's start with you. You love the cozy, and I think it works very well for what you do with your novels. I think everyone here has at least read one Tani Maria novel. Hopefully, yes. Can we see some hands? Yes. Okay. Right. You are a celebrity. Why the cozy, first of all, as a genre, and then what's been your journey from the first book to the work that you're working on now?
It's interesting, when I started writing, I actually didn't know the term cozy. But I realize in retrospect that I have read a lot of, most of what I've read actually until recently when I come to these events and then I've got to quickly read everybody's books, was things written pre-1950. So a lot of Agatha Christie, a lot of Dick Francis, and a lot of Earl Stanley Gardner. So I really love those old classics, and they relax me and I enjoy, and they're clever. And now recently I've read up on what a cozy is. And I've realized, yes, it is definitely a cozy, but also I do explore a little bit more issues than the cozy. So there are social issues, and there is a woman who's, Tani Maria, the main character, has been abused, and we are engaging with environmental issues and racial issues. But I think I started off with maybe because I was very ill when I started writing, and I wanted to do a lot of really feel-good stuff, and to some extent I was escaping my political life of activism, but the issues were all there, but I was keeping them a little bit in the background. And in fact, increasingly in the books, like in the second book, I deal with post-traumatic stress disorder and a lot more issues with all the various people in the group. And in my third book, I've got a character who's much more hardcore activist, and I actually went sort of getting braver and braver myself, and I interviewed someone who works with abused children, and that was the basis for some of the letters. So I've slowly, in a way, pulled out from the scary stuff of the world and then slowly coming back into it. But I think my books will remain cozy in that my focus is on the healing of the stuff instead of the grit itself. And because it's small town based and it's the same characters who continue, and the main aim is feeling good, and comedies a big aspect of it. But now that I have read what cozy is, I sort of realize sometimes I missed, book 3 I've left Ladysmith and travelled up to somewhere far away and brought in new characters, which breaks some of the rules. So I feel I'm kind of stepping in 3 different areas that I enjoy. The one is the cozy mystery, the other is engaging with social issues, and the other is writing beauty for beauty's sake. I just love, editing and playing with words, and so in a way there's a bit of a crossover of literary, crime, cozy, and social issue stuff. So I like to think.
Andrew, you started off on a tremendously high note with Cold Sleep Lullaby. I'm sure that book still gives you a couple of nightmares every now and then. and the character of February that you had returned in Solace. But you also do a very different kind of socially conscious fiction writing, thinking here of Refuge, Devil's Harvest, and you also dabble in narrative non-fiction where you delve into your life as a police reservist. So you probably out of the four have the most diverse approach to what we can call crime writing. Two questions. The first one is, would you call yourself a crime writer? Are you comfortable with that as a category? And then second, why the police procedural specifically?
First of all, I have to be comfortable calling myself a writer at all. I still struggle with that idea. I write as a hobby, and I write because I love it. It's not my career. I write when I can. Why crime writing? It allows me to write more plot-based books. So the books that I've written that are more socially active, like Refuge or like Devil's Harvest, are very, very strong in character, very strong in social issues. Whereas crime writing allows you to play with plot and to do things with characters that you wouldn't necessarily be able to do in a social book. I do find it quite difficult because I've been a cop for 20 years now, and when you write a crime thriller, you sit down and you work out the nuances of how the crime is going to be committed, how it's going to be covered up, why it's going to be so difficult to detect who the suspect is, to get an arrest, to actually get a conviction. And you can sit for days, weeks, months while you work out the nuances of this. Whereas in truth, your average crime is incredibly stupid, opportunistic, ill thought through, ill conceived. And would be a very, very short story if you actually wrote a real crime, and that's the crime that I deal with. So, my friend Pete Mahalik was murdered. Quite a well thought through murder, although they killed him in front of his children. How did they get caught 20 minutes later? Well, they drove through a stop street in front of a traffic office. You know, now, you put that in a book, and it's not going to work in crime fiction. I've had a car hijacker leave his ID book on the front seat.
Oh, idiot.
Yeah. My favourite was a housebreaker who plugged his phone into a charger while he was going through the house and then left it there. that kind of thing you can't really make up in fiction because it doesn't work. So I find that when I'm writing crime fiction, it does feel a little bit unreal. It doesn't feel as though I'm really portraying what I'm experiencing out there as a cop. But it does allow me to play with plot, and it does allow me to have a lot of fun with characters and with language.
I'm very keen to pursue this idea that both of you are quite keen stylists and that you enjoy words, but let's get to Deon for a moment. Deon, everyone, if you don't know Deon Meyer, I mean, you're living under a rock, right? But when I was going through Deon's back catalogue, it struck me that Deon's been going for more than 20 years, right? And he hasn't always been the Deon Meyer brand. And it's a long road, Deon. You've written in various genres. You've mixed genres from a straight police procedural, thriller, hardboiled elements, noir, even the speculative fiction, right, of Fever. So you're definitely branching out. We're starting off with questions of structure. So I'm going to ask about the police procedural because that is a very strong element of your work, and then specifically about returning characters in the serial form, which is part of that. Yeah.
I don't know why police procedural works. I just know that I certainly enjoy reading them. I still think Ed McBain, the great Ed McBain, was the greatest crime fiction author ever. And I was hugely influenced by him. The book that I'm writing now, in this week, I realized that I'm still emulating Ed McBain. I think the influence that he has had on me is inescapable. It's a genre that I love reading, and it's a genre that I love telling stories in. It's a genre that has got as you said, very strong structure. It's got such a tradition, and you feel very safe within that structure, within the conventions of crime fiction. I've tried to push the envelope a little with novels like Trackers, where I experimented with structure to a great extent. And then you realize why the structure is there, why the conventions are there, why the tradition is there. And it was a great relief for me to come back to the more traditional and conventional fiction. It allows you to do all the things that I love doing. I love having fun with the characters. I love telling stories that are fascinating, hopefully that keep people reading and keep them turning the page. For me, it's just a love affair, both as a reader and a writer. So, as you said, not all my books are traditional crime novels, but I love coming back to this one.
Okay, so change of plans is a fully English session. I'm sure you'll go. Jeanette, you are somewhat late to the party, but you certainly arrived with a bang, and you've created a truly fascinating, and I can say enigmatic if you don't mind. She is to an extent an enigmatic character, Luna. But always interesting, and a character that doesn't necessarily do what you would expect from her. Where does the character of Luna come from, and why the decision to write crime? I mean, you've written before, so why crime writing, and why crime writing is a vehicle for Luna?
Well, they say reading is a form of escaping from your life. Well, my writing is escaping from my life, I think, because Luna is exactly the opposite from what I am. And yeah, I enjoy having a second person in my life that I can not manipulate, because she often manipulates me, but somebody that can do things which I would never dream of doing. I started crime writing because I've always loved crime novels. I read a lot of crime. I think about 90% of what I read is crime. And I think it was just the natural thing for me to try a crime novel, and it worked. And that was the beginning. Does that answer your question?
So you've mentioned real-world issues that you enjoy exploring. What do you think, and this is a question for all the panelists, what do you think the pressures are in 2019 as a South African crime writer? Do you feel a responsibility to actively address social issues, or do you think it's an unnecessary burden and writers don't necessarily have to have an ethical imperative when they write? Is there something like just writing for writing's sake, or do you disagree? And that's one for Andrew and Deon and Jeanette Stals.
Jonathan, excuse me, can I just ask something from the audition van die wonderlike eerbare skrywers wat hier voor sit. As jy nou met Jana praat, dan hoor ek wat 'n ou tannie is met halfdoof en halfblind, dan hoor ek nie. Ek dink hy weet alles wat hy vir julle vra alreeds. So praat met ons asseblief.
Also, the other thing, it's mentioned that if you lift this, then the sound is a bit better. If you hold it down, it disappears. So,
And you've got the mic.
I want to take it. It does feel like you. Okay, yes. I don't know. I mean, in a way, that's a question as a human being. How do we live kind of questions. I think as writers, we can't be driven by shoulds. There has to be something that wells up in us as a writer, and sometimes it doesn't fit with what your mental and political pamphlet is that you would write. But I think as human beings, we express our issues and our concerns through what we write. And to some extent, yes, we are responsible as writers and in everything we do. But I found that when I feel I have to, then I throw it off and rebel against it. And I have found that as I've allowed myself in the books, I have naturally, so in book 1, I'm dealing with broad issues around abuse of women. In book 2, there's a PTSD group where I'm dealing with a whole lot of issues that have affected me. So I'll be affected by xenophobia, so I want to deal with that. I'll be affected by the conscription and the effects on people. So there will be those issues. And then in my 3rd book, I did find myself dealing with a lot of current issues around corruption, and my characters were almost parodies of Zuma and the whole fight against the $1 trillion arms deal. But those are to do with, this is what I feel in this moment, rather than studying the news and thinking this is my job as an activist to do such and such. And I've had to quite consciously not approach it in that way. And then I feel then what one raises is a little bit more authentic, and I think if you come with a very active telling people what to do, if your own political agenda is stronger than the story and the characters, then you actually defeat your purpose.
And then it doesn't ring true.
You don't move people, so in fact you shoot yourself in the foot. So I know it's a little bit of an odd spiral, and I'll be interested to hear what Andrew has to say on this. We were activists together in the 80s, so we kind of came from a similar place and then became writers, and whether it's, but for me I have to step into actually different shoes in order for what I say to have power, I think. And when I try to do when I did more educational writing, that's educational writing and it's a separate thing. So I think the wovenness, and I feel as human beings we need to be challenging and changing the world, so yes, everything we do, but I think as a writer, if you carry those shoulds, it might interfere with your power actually.
I think that crime writers are not social activists, and they're not trying to be social activists. But if you go and read a modern American aeroplane crime thriller novel, I won't name any authors, but you know who I'm talking about. Like if you buy it at the bookshop and you throw it away. There was John, when you interviewed me, you used a phrase once about a book that you read on a plane and then throw away. You called it something. You had a clever phrase for it, as you do.
I couldn't. I don't know these people. I couldn't use that.
All right. So just imagine one of those books. I mean, it's entertaining, and if you read it, but there is not a jot of social content in it because it doesn't need to be in that environment. Which those writers feel that there doesn't need to be. Now think of a South African writer. Anybody. I don't think there's a writer out there, a South African writer who can write without social content. We're steeped in it. We eat and sleep it. All of us. Whether it's issues of race, or gender bias, or violence, or whatever it is, we are all living it every single day. And so I don't think there's a South African writer that doesn't include that content in the way that we write. And for that reason, we can write crime that includes some of those issues. I mean, Deon's latest book has got corruption at the highest level, and it's based on state capture issues. But it's still a crime thriller, and it's a great read and a great book. What interests me, though, is why we are now able to write about crime, whereas there were hardly any crime writers in the 80s and in the 70s under apartheid. And yes, we are experiencing a crime wave, but yes, we are comfortable reading about crime now because I think it has a social content to it as well. Whereas people weren't comfortable to write crime under an oppressive regime. And it's a question I've raised at innumerable forums like this, is why is no one writing a crime thriller in South Sudan right now? Why is no one writing a crime thriller in Yemen right now? It would be utterly and totally inappropriate to write crime thriller in that kind of context. We're able to write it in this kind of context because we are a stable democracy. Huge problems, of course, but we are a stable constitutional democracy with a judiciary that works and a police force that's trying to do its best. And in that context, we can write crime thriller, whereas in a context of war or of complete decay and falling apart, I think that one can't. So it's an interesting question for me why crime thrillers are so popular at a time like this in our history.
That's a subject for a whole new discussion. I agree with you. I mean, I still think that the reason why we didn't write crime fiction under apartheid is that the detective is the representative of order and of the state, and if you have a state that is a regime like the apartheid regime, then it simply doesn't work. As far as including social issues, do you feel a responsibility? The only responsibility I feel is to provide a reader with value for his 300 odd bucks, entertainment value. My aim and my hope and my responsibility is to write an entertaining book. Entertaining in its widest sense, something that is unpredictable, that is interesting, that is hopefully fascinating. But as Andrew says, you can't write in South Africa and not have your characters at least confront certain social issues, and then you have to let them react and interact with those social issues and they make statements. I agree with Sally that you can never allow those things to drive your story, because the story is everything, and everything serves the story. And if there is a social issue that serves and improves the story, that makes the plot better, that makes the characters more interesting, then by all means. But I think the moment that becomes your aim, and if you want to have this big message, you should rather become a priest and not a conviction.
Om nou iets daarop te sê.
Praat uit jou hart uit.
Alright, dan begin my verskoning Afrikaans praat. Ja, nee, ek het onlangs met iemand van die Community Policing Forum gesels. En die persoon het vir my gesê dat hulle uitgangspunt is oë en ore. As die gemeenskap nie betrokke is by die polisie, dan werk die polisie se werk, dan kan die polisie nie hulle werk doen nie. Nou, hoekom ek misdaad skryf, is miskien maar omdat ek bekommerd is oor wat ek om my sien, nie noodwendig net wat die crime betref nie, maar ook wat die sosiale stand van baie mense betref. Daar is baie armoede en noodwendig uit armoede kom misdaad. Maar tot watter mate ek probeer 'n boek te skryf daaroor enigiets daarin kan verander, dit is nou 'n oop vraag. Ek word in die nag wakker en dan, ek dink alle skrywers is dromers, maar ek word in die nag wakker en dan droom ek met oop oë. 'n storie kom net in my kop, dit speel af, karakters kom meld aan by my. Ek sal begin met my storie, maar die karakters gaan nie noodwendig hulle dit voorsê hoe die storie moet verloop nie. Dikwels sal ek dink dat dit is nou 'n goeie plot vir hierdie crime storie. En dan as ek so halfpad is, dan gebeur daar iets en dan sê die karakter nee, ek gaan iets anders doen. En daar's geen manier wat ek dit kan verhoed nie. So, om van die vrou, hoekom 'n crime storie skryf, soos ek sê, dit is iets waarmee ons omring word. En dit is iets wat ons almal pla. Ons wil graag sien dat geregtigheid geskied, ons wil graag sien dat boewe in die tronk beland, dat moordenaars miskien nog doodstraf kry. By party mense is dit die gevoel. Maar ja, daar is nie veel wat ons as individue kan doen om te die misdaad wat daagliks in die land gebeur nie. So, ek het ten minste die satisfaksie dat ek 'n storie kan skryf, dat 'n misdaad gepleeg word en dat die misdadiger aan die pen bring.
Dit is 'n baie lekker gevoel. Dit is 'n lekker gevoel. Ja. Ek is absoluut versot op die idee wat jy nou net genoem het van droom met oop oë. Dit is my so 'n mooi beeld. En dit swaal sterk nou so mooi met my volgende vraag van hoe die speurfigure op die ouende vorm aanneem vir die skrywers. Sally, I'd like to start with you. You have a non-traditional detective in Tani Maria who is interesting and engaging and very amusing to say the least, but by no means an actual detective. And you put her in a relationship with a rather conflicted man on the law, and they navigate their relationship, but they're both on rather unsure footing. So I'd like to ask you two questions. The first one is about your...
Sorry, can I just interrupt briefly? I forget. Ik wil net vir Jeanette vra watter pille sy neem voordat sy gaan slaap.
Tannie Maria en die droompille.
Met jou vra. Ek gaan dit weer skryf vir my.
We'll get that for you. So my first question is about your choice of detective. And he's a conflicted man in his own way. And how he navigates his way with Tannie Maria, who is actually quite a crime solver in an unexpected way himself. So that balance and that unorthodox duo, I'd say. They're quite unconventional, unorthodox, but they extend your characters doing investigations beyond merely having a detective. So how does that work? And are you frustrated with them and with their relationship?
They did manage to have sex.
Thank you! But it took a little while.
I was thinking of it, I'm going to take it. So I'm not frustrated with it. I don't know if it's, I mean, in some years everything about Tannie Maria is unconventional, but I think the tension between the amateur detective and the police force is a common thing. That the amateur detectives want to do all the little scan of werk here, and then the police are irritated with him. But maybe what is unconventional is putting them in a relationship with each other.
Yeah.
So that tension is a dynamic between them where they're sometimes working against each other and sometimes working together. I think that answers it.
Andrew, you put your detective through the ringer in a spectacular fashion. I mean, Cold Sleep Lullaby was bad enough, but then came Solace, and I was like, sure, just give this poor guy a break. But you didn't, and apparently you're busy with the third one. So, two questions for you. The first one is, what are the challenges of writing a detective figure that is previously marginalized, so a black or a colored detective? What are the challenges there? And why pair him up with a black female detective? And what kind of dynamic does that bring to the writing itself?
I think it's partly made a point that Deon has made already, that I think it would, for me, have been hard to have a white detective. I wanted to write from a more marginalized perspective in the police force. But it was also interesting for me to see how the police force has changed. The reason why I joined it as a reservist in 1999 was that comrades had come to me and said, look, you've taken controversies where you've taken the old South African police force, you've put them together into a new South African police service, you've given them all guns and you said, okay, get on with it. And you know, isn't this just waiting to explode? Isn't this the worst kind of social experiment ever undertaken? There's very little training, there's very little counselling, there's very little going on to deal with past histories. How are policemen and women going to cope with this and cope with each other? And that's really why I got involved. And it's been absolutely fascinating for me to see how it has worked and how people from the old force and people from the new force have been able to work together. And I've ended up working with old security policemen who in the 80s we would have been trying to kill each other, and in the 90s and the 2000s we've prepared to work together and we've got each other's back. So the whole racial dynamic and the history of the police force is something that's fascinating for me, and I wanted to investigate that from the perspective of a coloured detective. One of the weaknesses in my writing that I'm very aware of is that not only in my crime writing, but in all my writing, I tend to write troubled male characters and very strong female characters who hold it together and allow them to generally misbehave and hold the sort of centre of the book together. And I've done that in almost all of my books. And it's probably a reflection of me and who I am. No, genuinely, it probably is. But it is Women's Day today, so maybe it's physical. So I took Year Bride February in cold sleep, and he's falling apart. He's got a drug problem, he's got a drinking problem, he's on the point of losing his job, and I pair him up with a young black female constable who's as solid as a rock, who's a new South African. She knows what's what, she's street smart, she's sorted, and I enjoyed that pairing, and it gave me an opportunity to comment about how I saw the new South Africa. In Solace, I paired him up with other strong female characters. They were slightly different in the way that they managed him, but it also allowed him to explore his own vulnerabilities and his own insecurities. So he actually says incredibly stupid things in Solace. He says things that are marginally offensive because he doesn't understand. But there's this strong female character who does understand and is able to bring him back and not allow him to drift off into being purely offensive. So it's a model that I've used in all of my books, and I don't seem to be able to break away from it. In the new book that I'm writing right now, I've just started a new Year Bride February thriller because my publisher's having a fit about everything else I've thrown. I'm going to try not to do it, but unfortunately he's already met this amazing social worker. And I think we're on chapter 3, so doesn't look good.
Deon, you've had a fascinating journey with Benny Griesel particularly. I mean, he was a character that announced himself really as a drunk, and that's quite a comical force. And he's matured in so many ways, but it's been a very challenging road for you. What about the Benny Griesel character has been the most challenging for you? And have you felt an expectation from readers to steer it in a certain way?
Yeah, readers send me emails all the time saying, please don't let Benny drink again. You know, as you say, I mean, he started out as a little character in Dead Before Dying, and I never had any intention of making him more than that. He was supposed to, the only reason why I needed a drunk policeman was he had to walk in on a love scene of the protagonist, not too bad, and that's all I
Very
needed.
awkward love scene.
Yeah, awkward, you know, but still, you know, I wanted to spoil the fun, so I needed a drunk colleague. And then this Benny guy, I mean, when I created him, when I create a major character that I know is going to be playing a large role in a book, then I spend a lot of time thinking about his name. But with this character, I thought, well, who was my favorite teacher at school? It was Ben Griesel, so I just called this guy Ben Griesel. Well, he passed away. I mean,
From the shock.
Long before. So, you know, I didn't spend much time thinking about this guy because I needed him for 2 or 3 pages. And then he didn't want to go away. Now, if I say that, I mean, it's not as if he's that real to me and he insinuates himself into the book. The creative process is much more complex and incredible, where you realize that, and I think one instinctively knows that something has potential. Because in crime fiction, in thrillers, conflict is the mother of suspense. So you're always looking for sources of conflict, because that is how you build suspense. And within a character, there are so many concentric circles of conflict. And if a character is at war with himself and with his loved ones and his job and the world, then it has so much more potential. And I think I instinctively knew that this Benny Griesel character, as the book went on, I thought, well, maybe use it for this and that and the other thing. But by the end of the book, I'd say he forced himself into the book. I think I realized that he had great potential, but still he had to wait up to 2 or 3 books before I had a story that fit him. And that's the way that I work, is that story comes first, and then if I have a character that I've already created, that fits the world of that story perfectly, then I will use her or him. And if not, then I'll create a new one, because each is as much fun. New characters are a lot of fun, or reusing a character and putting them on a new trajectory or a further trajectory of their lives is as interesting. The challenges with Benny, I think keeping him fresh and interesting, and you know, as human beings mature, and I think as characters mature, as Benny Griesel has matured and learned his lessons, if he makes the same mistakes over and over again, then I'm going to get frustrated and the reader's going to get frustrated. So the challenge has been to keep his challenges fresh, to keep his demons fresh, and not make him do the same thing. So that's why, especially in his relationship life and his professional life, he's had new challenges, I hope, with every book. In Croy, that is going to be out as Last Hunt by October. He's wondering, should he ask Alexa to marry him? And this is a very big thing for him because of his past. So there's always something new that hopefully he is confronted with. And that has been the major challenge.
Yeah, I just said one of the things I've enjoyed, one of the naughty things I've enjoyed most was referencing Benny Griesel in Solace.
And you got a lot of flack from Margie Orford for doing that.
Yeah, well, I've had a fight with Margie Orford in Cold Sleep and in some other books where we referenced each other. She had me naked, I think. I think she had me, I can't remember now, I'm often enough to
You or your character?
No, me, it was a natural reference to me. It was really hurtful.
I fantasize about that too.
On that note, so in Solace, there's a Benny Griesel. I introduced Captain Benny Griesel as something of a mentor for Eberhard, and he gives Eberhard advice. But there is a reference in Solace 2 that maybe Benny Griesel's back on the bottle. So I have threatened Deon that I'm going to make Benny come out of the closet.
There will be a hit on you.
But it could be fun if I get Benny to come out of the closet in whatever book I produce, and then how does Deon deal with that in the Do you take it seriously or just ignore it and like put it in the It's only brown, yeah, nobody reads it anyway.
Are you allowed to do that?
I don't know. It's not a real thing.
It's like a trademark.
I don't think so.
You might just want to give it to someone, but legally it's not, you know,
No, it's fine.
copyright.
But I ask, I mean, you know, I was curious, and did you actually consult? I mean, the way you did it, in terms of you actually, I think there was a sort of a reference to reference, but also reviewing, you know, in the sense that towards Benny, the way you did it.
I thought I was fair to him.
I thought you did it very well, but did you actually chatted to on the content?
I was very naughty. I gave him the manuscript to ask him what he thought of it without telling him that lurking inside there was a reference. But he found it and he was
I was very honored. And Benny too.
All new possibilities are opening up.
I'm quite scared of the possibility of opening up for you, sir. Jeanette? Jy en Luna stap na die park, maar sy het seker nie net opgedaag eendag met al haar bagasie nie. En sy het nogal baie bagasie nie. Jy het vir haar hele klompie terf gevra gegee. Hoekom het jy besluit om haar persoonlike lewe so sterk te laat figureer in die boeke? Want daar is 'n sterk spanningslyn, maar die Luna karakter spesifiek en sekere verhoudings is sentraal by wat jy in die boeke doen. Hoekom daai persoonlike aanslag?
Ek dink ek het baie keer gewonder hoe 'n polisievrou hoe sy cope met haar werk. Ek dink dit is maklik om in die polisie te wees nie. Ek dink dit is nog moeiliker vir 'n vrou in sekere opsigte. Want deesdae moes hulle van hulle verwag om nie net handjies vas te hou en traantjies af te vee as 'n vrou 'n probleem het nie. Dat word van hulle verwag om werklik polisieeringswerk te doen. Om in te gaan en om ek sê hulle gewig om te gooi nie, maar hulle moet sterk staan. En ja, toe het nou maar gewonder, hoe sal 'n vrou wees wat daarmee kan cope, soos hulle sê. Ek self sal definitief nie daai tipe werk aan doen. En ek het toe maar 'n karakter geskep wat die teenoorgestelde is van wat ek is. Sy is fyn, sy kan verskriklik vinnig hardloop, ek kan nog nooit in my lewe hardloop. En ja, sy is 'n alleen mens. En ek kan nie eintlik vir jou sê presies hoe my karakter uitgekom het nie. Ek dink, ek het begin skryf en soos wat ek geskryf het, soos wat die storie ontvou het sy al meer duidelik vir my geword en het haar issues meer en meer geword. En ek het besef dat daar moet redes wees hoekom sy bietjie van 'n alleen mens is en dan soek mense 'n rede in haar lewe en dan bring jy dit na vore. En die rede hoekom ek haar 'n halfbroer gegee het, is maar net om ek wou vir haar ondersteuning gee in die werk wat sy doen, maar ek wou nie gehad het dit met 'n geliefde wees nie of ja, 'n minnaar wees nie. En ja, ek weet nie wat is die antwoord op jou vraag.
Maar ek is nog nuuskierig oor daai dinamika tussen hulle.
Hoe die dinamika tussen hulle. Ja, ek dink met die dat in die moderne, so ek sê die jonger skrywers, laat baie maklik 'n man en vrou in die bed klim. Dit is sommer net hulle ontmoet en hulle gaan net uit en dan, ja, gaan net bed toe.
Dis die kindergenerasie.
Ja.
Ek kan dit vasstaaf.
Ja. Maar ek wil gehad het, sy moet 'n goeie verhouding hê met 'n kollega, maar daai moontlikheid moet bestaan. Ek wil gehad het, ek het net gesoek na iets wat meer is as 'n seksuele verhouding en iets wat vir haar die ondersteuning gee wat sy as vrou nodig het in die polisie en dan as dit nou so 'n bietjie drama kan bysit en 'n bietjie intrige, dan ja, is dit net 'n bonus.
It's often said that it takes a village to raise a child, but it often takes a village to solve a crime as well in South African crime fiction. The topic originally, I think it's maybe 40 minutes in that we're finally getting to, is about the support for sleuths and for the detective figures. You have a wide, and when I say wide, I really mean a wide and very diverse array of characters that you include in your novels. Specifically helpers, but some characters that are quite clearly quite antagonistic towards Tani Maria and would rather see her fail in solving the crime. Where do you find that balance between helpers and antagonists in the characters that support your main narrative? How do you find a balance between having a main detective figure and supporting characters that don't threaten to scupper the whole thing? Because they often have a life of their own, I think.
Pause. So, I think Tani Maria's main, I was trying to think with Tani Maria's support, and I think her main support is her food. It supports herself, and when people write in with the love advice and recipe column, she gives a little bit of advice, but her main thing she gives is a recipe. And when she's trying to get information on the people, she just takes her vetkoek with mince or drop dead delicious Venus cake.
Yes.
And they just can't not answer the question. So the people will slam the door, but they're, ooh, it's like vetkoek and mince. So, and it's also something that often gives her clues. So that is, I mean, in the non-human realm, but she really works closely with Jessie, who's this feisty investigative journalist.
Jessie is amazing. I love her.
She's really hardcore. She wants to DDT the bad guys with like from spray them. She's quite kind of, so she's a bit of a foil for Tani Maria, who's like very nice, but I mean she's strong in herself, but she's also she's been brought up like a proper Christian Afrikaans woman, and she's respectful to people, and she sees things from a slightly different way. So Jessie will have a very straight way, and Maria will always have a sort of slightly odd way of seeing it. So like in book, she's now got a new character, I'm going to jump ahead a bit to book 3, called Zabanguni, who is strong, black, no sugar, whereas Maria's white, sweet and milky. No, white, anyway. she's sort of white and sweet. But they give us different ways of looking at things. So Zabanguni will come with all the facts around abuse of women and statistics, and this is what's happening, and give these kind of lectures in quite an irritating way, probably like I used to do. Actually gave her, the middle name is my Xhosa name, so I kind of gave her an opportunity just to be that irritating activist that I was, that just knows and gives all the stuff. And Maria sits there and she works it out, and she asks about how do the statistics work when, so if there's an average of a woman is raped so many times in her life, if one woman is raped more, then does it mean other women are raped less? And she works out this whole thing that essentially, because she had such a bad time, she's freed up other women. So she just comes with a slightly different perspective around things, and different ways of handling things that are a bit more gut and a little bit less brain. So sometimes the characters, although they're working together, they're working from different perspectives. But mainly her and Jessie are there, and because she actually writes love advice letters, she shouldn't really be doing this stuff. So she gets drawn in either through her letters, or Jessie's the investigative journalist, so then Jessie will, Jessie wants to track down a story, someone dies, she wants to know it, and Maria always has to have a personal reason to get drawn in. So that's why I also need the other characters. And I don't really know, like Deon and Andrew really know the police work stuff. So I mean, poor Andrew, he gets like 20 emails from me per book. saying, what happens here, and where does the forensic do this and that? And the fact that I'm dealing with amateur sleuth means that I can be stupid about it. And I just want to get a little bit right when the police come in, but I can brush over it. Because it's not my main knowledge and my main interest, but the different characters allow me to do that. And then someone like Catchy, so there's 3 women work on the Gazette. She's a little bit of a breaks in the situation, like don't get yourselves in trouble, but she still plays a role. I'm not really sure who you're referring to, the people who get in the way. I mean, apart from the baddies, but which is sort of an anything, but generally, Maria takes cake or fed cook and people all help. So Jessie even calls her along, on these things that are just come, and can't you bake some cookies or...
Andrew, I want to ask you specifically about the character of Eberhard, this idea of the defective detective. It's often something, it's a bit of a, I don't want to call it a cliche, but in many ways it is, and I think it's a crutch for lesser writers to have a detective with a lot of personal problems and to make him an alcoholic and to have a familial strife and things like that. So I want to ask you about the challenges of writing a credible character, because Eberhard is very interesting and he is definitely more than his flaws. And then the supporting character of Koliswa particularly, and what she allowed you to do.
I'll come at that question from a slightly different angle, because I was thinking about this idea of the support for detectives and where clues come from, and community involvement. And I was thinking, I've unfortunately forgotten the name of the movie, but it's a fairly old movie about an assassin with that French actor, Jean Reno, I think it was. And he's an assassin, and his only emotional attachment is to a pot plant. Do people remember that movie?
It's Leon.
Leon, that's right, that's that. Okay. Yeah, the professional. So he's a professional hitman and very good at what he does. But the way that he survives in the world is that he has no attachments at all except the pot plant that he polishes and he takes with him from one hit to the next. And he's quite a likable character, although he spends his life shooting people. And then he meets, I think it's a young Natalie Portman. It's her first role as a teenager. And I can't remember, I think her parents get killed or something, and he feels very sorry about it, and he takes her in. And of course it's a disaster, because now he's got a human attachment. And he's got a community. And she slows him down, and he makes mistakes, and he can't do certain things that he would do before. And eventually, I think he loses his pot plant, which is a really bad moment in the movie. And from there, it just goes from bad to worse. And I was thinking about that movie and about how, criminals, anybody committing a crime comes from a community. You can't commit crime, whether it's one crime or many crimes, without somehow drawing your community into it. I remember the movie Heat with Robert De Niro, and he's a cash and transit house guy. And he says, the way to succeed in crime is you never form an attachment you can't walk away from in 2 minutes. And of course he falls in love. And then it's also a disaster. He's slowed down, he makes mistakes, and he gets caught in the end. So it's always interesting to me the extent to which community is necessarily integrally part of and affected by anybody's criminal activity. And that brings me to the detectives, because in real life, a detective will be trying to investigate a crime, be getting absolutely nowhere, and the girlfriend will walk in and say, just had a fight, and here's all the evidence you need. Now, if you put that into crime thriller novel, it's not going to work. You've got to have your detective who's uncovering facts because he's clever, or he's dogged, or he's determined, or he's something. But you can't have halfway through Cold Sleep Lullaby. Someone walks in and says, oh, by the way, he did it, and here's the evidence, and there's, you're just going to throw up your hands and disbelieve. Yeah.
He's horrible.
Yeah. So you've got to play the fictional game when you're writing. So no matter how defective your detective is, and they generally are, because you're trying to reflect real life. And if you've ever had to deal with a South African detective, then they come with their problems. And we all do. And it's for that reason that you've got to feel some kind of affinity to this character. But at the end of the day, they have got to solve the crime with a bit of help from here and there. But it can't be handed to them on a platter in a work of fiction.
Irony of you saying how useless detectives are, sitting right next to Deon Meyer, who is probably the author making the best case for South African police, doing their very best under very trying circumstances. So, a two-part question for you, Deon. First of all, with this police procedural element where you have a main detective, but you have a whole team, and you are clearly very explicit in explaining what each person's role is in that team, and that it's always more than just one person solving the crime. What kind of responsibility do you feel in order to present the police in an accurate way? Do you feel any pressure?
I don't feel any pressure, but it's really great if I have some friends who are in the violent crimes unit of the Hawks. When they read the book and they send me an email or they send me a text message saying they really loved it, it gives me immense pride and satisfaction. But they are not my main audience. My responsibility is towards the general reader, and my favorite English word is verisimilitude. I think what you need is the texture of the truth. It's got to ring true, it's got to be credible. Verisimilitude, I can't spell it. But
It's a very long word, like 5 syllables.
Yeah.
The stuff you put on
Sprinkly stuff.
Yeah. It's very good. It's got to be credible for the reader. The problem is that, and I've often said this, and Andrew will support me, the life of a detective, the real life of a detective, is 90% boredom and 10% craziness. Where they went outside of courthouses waiting to go testify, or nothing happens in the case. They are so bogged down in administration that if you had to put that in a book and show the real life of detectives, nobody would read this. So you only show the action parts, you only show the fun parts, and that is fiction, because this is, that's entertainment. What was the question?
Jeanette, wat is vir jou die lekkerste aan skryf en waar kom die moeilikheid in? Is al ooit wat jy net dink ek kry nie geskryf, dis my te moeilik. Kom dit vir jou natuurlijk? Want jy skryf nogal vinnig. Elke keer dat ek net my oë uitvee en met my oë oop droog was hy, dan het jy liever boek. So ek wil graag vir jy te weer aanpak.
Ja, ek staan so 4 uur in die oggend op. En dan, wel nie elke oggend nie, maar sommige oggende, want ek weet dan het my drome nou al begin en dan moet ek dit maar neerskryf, anders vergeet ek dit. So dan skryf ek maar wat in my kop kom tot so by 10 uur se kant. En dit is 'n hele paar ure se werk per dag. So ek doen die SOS, ek sit dan op die stoel. Ja, wat is je vraag?
Wat is SOS?
Sit dan op stoel. Sit dan op stoel.
Mensen leren altijd nog iets nieuws.
Ja, jy kan nie skryf as jy nie bereid is om te gaan sit nie. Ja. Maar wat is jou vraag?
Is er ooit tyd dat het veel moeilijk is om te schrijven?
Nee, want as ek nie lus is nie, dan gaan werk ek in die tuin en dan of ek doen iets anders en dan kom die karakters maar net en dan praat hulle met my of 2 van hulle raak aan die stryger langs my en dan ja.
Is dit die stem in jou kop of die karakter?
Nee, dis die karakters, hulle stem in my kop. Uitbidde. Nee, hulle laat my nie met rus nie. So dit is nie vir my moeilik om te skryf nie. Ek moet maar net doen wat hulle vir my sê of ja, wat hulle vir my voorskryf, hoe hulle vir my die storie vertel of die storie afspeel. Nee, ek kan nie moeilik om te skryf.